Okay, now we will be discussing our second part, that is your audit program. Let's read one by one. So it is desirable. What is it desirable? It is desirable that in the respect of each audit, and more particularly for bigger audits, an audit program should be drawn up. An audit program is a list of examination and verification steps to be applied and set out in such a way that the interrelationship of one step to another is clearly shown and designed, keeping in view the assertions, keeping in view, very important, keeping in view the assertions discernible in the statement of accounts produced for audit, or on the basis of appraisal of the accounting records of the client. So what would be the definition of audit program? An audit program consists of series of verification procedures to be applied to financial statements and accounts for a given company for the purpose of obtaining sufficient evidence to enable the auditor to express an informed opinion on such statements. In other words, audit program is a detailed plan. It is a detailed plan of applying audit procedures in given circumstances with instructions for the appropriate techniques to be adopted for accomplishing the audit objective. So what is audit program? Audit program consists of series of verification procedures to be applied to the financial statements and accounts for a given company for the purpose of obtaining sufficient evidence to enable the auditor to express an informed opinion on such statements. In other words, audit program is a detailed plan of applying audit procedures in given circumstances with instructions for the appropriate techniques to be adopted for accomplishing the audit objectives. तो इधर audit procedures भी होते हैं और instructions भी होती है. Evolving one audit program not practicable for all businesses. Businesses vary in nature, size and composition. Work which is suitable for one business may not be suitable to others. Efficiency and operation of internal control and the exact nature of service to be rendered by the auditor are other factors that vary from assignment to assignment. So what are the other factors that vary from assignment to assignment? Efficiency and operation of internal controls and the exact nature of service to be rendered by the auditor are other factors that vary from assignment to assignment. On account of such variations, evolving one audit program applicable to all businesses under all circumstances is not practicable. However, it becomes necessary to specify in detail the audit program, the nature of work to be done, so that no time will be wasted on matter that is not pertinent to the engagement, and any special matter or any specific situation can be taken care of. So businesses vary. What would be the first point? Businesses vary in nature, size and composition. Work which is suitable to one business may not be suitable to others. Efficiency and operation of internal controls and the exact nature of service to be rendered by the auditor are the other factors that vary from assignment to assignment. On account of such variations, in evolving one audit program applicable to all businesses under all circumstances is not practicable. However, it becomes necessary to specify in detail in audit program the nature of work to be done, so that no time will be wasted on matters not pertinent to the engagement, and any special matter or any specific situation can be taken care of. Assistant engaged to be encouraged to keep an open mind. To start with, again the same thing, the auditor, having regard to the nature, size and composition of business and the dependability of the internal control and the given scope of work, should frame a program which should aim at providing for minimal essential work, may be termed as a standard program. So standard program क्या होता है? Auditor having regard to the nature, size and composition and dependability of internal control and the given scope of work, should frame a program which should aim at providing for minimum essential work, may be termed as standard program. An experience is gained. What is gained? An experience is gained by actually carrying out the work, and the program may be altered to take care of situations which were left out originally but are found relevant for a particular concern. Similarly, if any work originally provided for proves beyond the doubt to be unnecessary or irrelevant, it may be dropped. So that is why the assistant engaged in the job should be encouraged to keep an open mind beyond the program given to him. He should be instructed to note and report significant matters coming to his notice to his seniors or to a partner or proprietor of firm engaged for doing the ऑडिट. सो आई होप इट इज़ क्लियर. अगर ये असिस्टेंट के बारे में क्वेश्चन पूछेंगे तो आप क्या लिखोगे? पहले तो स्टैंडर्ड प्रोग्राम का डेफिनेशन लिखोगे कि नेचर, साइज, कॉम्पोजिशन, डिपेंडेबिलिटी ऑफ इंटरनल कंट्रोल, स्कोप ऑफ वर्क, फ्रेम ऑफ प्रोग्राम विच शुड aim at providing for minimum essential work may be termed a standard program. As experience is gained by actually carrying out the work, the program may be altered to take care of situations which were left out originally but are found relevant for the particular concern. Similarly, if any work originally provided for provides beyond doubt to be unnecessary or irrelevant, it may be dropped. The assistant engaged in the job should encourage to keep an open mind beyond the program given to him. He should be instructed to note and report significant matters coming to his notice to his seniors or to the partner or proprietor of firm engaged for doing the audit. ऑडिट प्रोग्राम का पीरियोडिक रिव्यू होना चाहिए. सो दैट शुड बी अ पीरियोडिक रिव्यू ऑफ द ऑडिट प्रोग्राम टू असेस whether the same continues to be adequate for obtaining requisite knowledge and evidence about transactions. क्यों पीरियोडिक रिव्यू करना चाहिए? ताकि हम असेस कर पाए कि क्या जो वो प्रोग्राम है वो कंटिन्यू करता है हमें और एडिक्वेट भी है हमें वो requisite knowledge देने के लिए. So that is why there should be a periodic review of the audit program to assess whether the same continues to be adequate for obtaining requisite knowledge and evidence about the transactions. Unless this is done, any change in business policy of the client may not be adequately known, and consequently audit work may be carried out on the basis of an obsolete program, and for this negligence the whole audit may have to face legal consequences. If the audit program for the audit, for example, if the audit program for the audit of a branch of a financing house drawn up a number of years ago fails to take into consideration that the previous policy of financing of a vehicle has been changed to financing of real estate acquisition, the whole audit concerned thereunder would be entirely misdirected and may even result into nothing more than farce. ठीक है, तो इसलिए periodic review होना चाहिए. Again we'll discuss there should be a periodic review of the audit program to assess whether the same continues to be adequate for continuing obtaining requisite knowledge and evidence about transactions. Unless this is done, any change in business policy of the client may not be adequately known, and consequently audit work may be carried on the basis of an obsolete program. For this negligence, the whole audit may have to face legal consequences. What is the utility of audit procedure program? The utility of audit program can be retained and enhanced only by keeping the program as also the client's operations and internal control under periodic review, so that inadequacies or redundancies of the program may be रिमूव. तो ऑडिट प्रोग्राम का यूटिलिटी को एनहांस कैसे करोगे? ओनली बाय थ्रू पीरियोडिक रिव्यू, ताकि आप इनएडिक्वेसी या रिडंडेंसी रिमूव कर सको. अगेन रिवाइजिंग, द यूटिलिटी ऑफ ऑडिट प्रोग्राम कैन बी रिटेन्ड एंड एनहांस्ड only by keeping the program as to the client operations and internal control under periodic review, so that inadequacies or redundancies of the program may be removed. However, as a basic feature, audit program not only lists the task to be carried out, but also contains a few relevant instructions like the extent of checking, the sampling, etc. तो list of tasks के साथ साथ कुछ instructions भी होते हैं. So as long as the program is not officially changed by the principal, every assistant deputed on the job should unfailingly carry out the detailed work according to the instructions governing the work. Many persons believe that this brings an element of rigidity in audit program. This is not true provided the periodic review is taken. ये अगर ये एलिमेंट ऑफ रिजिडिटी है ऑडिट प्रोग्राम में, ये ट्रू नहीं है अगर पीरियोडिक रिव्यू लिया जाता है टू कीप द प्रोग्राम एज अप टू डेट एज पॉसिबल, टू एनकरेज द असिस्टेंट्स ऑन द जॉब टू ऑब्जर्व ऑल सेलियंट फीचर्स ऑफ वेरियस अकाउंटिंग फंक्शंस ऑफ द क्लाइंट. इंपॉर्टेंट है, आ सकता है, राइट. क्विकली अगेन रिवाइजिंग द एंटायर थिंग, पीरियोडिक रिव्यू ऑफ द ऑडिट प्रोग्राम. There should be a periodic review of the audit program to assess whether the same continues to be adequate for obtaining requisite knowledge and evidence about the transactions. Unless this is done, any change in business policy of the client may not be adequately known, and consequently audit work may be carried on the basis of obsolete program, and for this negligence the whole audit may have to face legal consequences. The utility of the audit program can be retained and enhanced only by keeping the program as also the client operations and internal control under periodic review, so that inadequacies or redundancies of the program may be removed. As a basic feature, audit program not only lists the tasks to be carried out but also contains a few relevant instructions like the extent of checking, sampling, plan, etc. So as long as the program is not officially changed by the principal, every assistant deputed on the job should unfailingly carry out the detailed work according to the instructions governing the work. Many persons believe that this brings an element of rigidity in audit process. This is not true, provided the periodic review is undertaken to keep the program as up to date as possible by encouraging the assistants on the job to observe all the salient features of various accounting functions of the client. Next is constructing an audit program. The audit planning ideally commences at the conclusion of the previous year audit, and along with the audit related program, it should be reconsidered for modification as the audit progresses. Such consideration is based on the auditor's review of modification is based on the auditor's review of internal control, his preliminary evaluation thereof, and the results of his compliance and substantive procedures. While developing an audit program, the auditor may conclude that relying on certain internal control is an effective and efficient way to conduct his audit. However, the auditor may decide not to rely on internal controls when there are other more efficient ways of obtaining sufficient and appropriate audit evidence. The auditor should also consider क्या-क्या चीजें consider करना चाहिए. The timing of procedures, the coordination of any assistant expected from client, the availability of assistant, and the involvement of the other auditors or experts. इनकरेक्ट के लिए ये बहुत ही इंपॉर्टेंट है कि ऑडिटर नॉर्मली हैज़ द फ्लेक्सिबिलिटी इन डिसाइडिंग व्हेन टू परफॉर्म ऑडिट प्रोसीजर्स. तो ऑडिट प्रोसीजर्स कब परफॉर्म करना है उसकी फ्लेक्सिबिलिटी ऑडिटर को नॉर्मली होती है, लेकिन हाउएवर इन सम केसेस द ऑडिटर में हैव नो डिस्क्रिप्शन एज टू टाइमिंग. जैसे कि फॉर एग्जाम्पल द टेकिंग ऑफ इन्वेंट्रीज by client personnel discretion नहीं है. Verifying the securities and cash balance at the year end. So further, the auditor normally has flexibility in deciding when to perform audit procedures. However, in some cases the auditor may have no discretion as to the timing, right? So I hope it is clear. पहले क्या बोला है, ऑडिट प्लानिंग जो है वो कमेंस करता है द कंक्लूजन ऑफ द प्रीवियस ईयर ऑडिट अलॉन्ग विद द रिलेटेड प्रोग्राम. अब उसी ऑडिट प्रोग्राम को मॉडिफिकेशन के लिए रिकंसिडर करना चाहिए. तो कंसिडर करते समय ऑडिटर रिव्यू करेगा इंटरनल कंट्रोल एंड अदर 2 थिंग्स. ठीक है, तब ऑडिट प्रोग्राम जब वो डेवलप करता है वो कंक्लूड कर सकता है कि वो रिलाई करे कंट्रोल्स पे या रिलाई ना करे. तो ऑडिटर कंसिडर करेगा ये 4 चीज़ें इन एडिशन. एंड ऑडिटर नॉर्मली हैज़ फ्लेक्सिबिलिटी इन डिसाइडिंग व्हेन टू परफॉर्म ऑडिट प्रोसीजर्स. हाउएवर इन सम केसेस द ऑडिटर मे हैव नो डिस्क्रिप्शन एज टू दी timing. So for the purpose of program construction, the following points should be kept in mind. For the purpose of program construction, the following points should be kept in mind. Stay within the scope and limitation of management. Prepare a written audit program setting forth the procedures that are needed to implement audit plan. Determine the evidence reasonably available and identify the best evidence for determining the necessary satisfaction. Apply only those steps and procedures which are useful in accomplishing the verification purpose in specific situation. Include the audit objectives for each area and sufficient details which serves as a set of instruction for the assistants involved in audit and help in controlling the proper execution of work. Consider all possibilities of error. Coordinate the procedures to be applied to the related items. So I hope it is clear that for the purpose of program construction, the following points should be kept in mind. Stay within the scope and limitation of management. Prepare a written audit program setting forth the procedures that are needed to implement audit plan. Determine the evidence reasonably available and identify the best evidence for determining the necessary satisfaction. Apply only those steps and procedures which are useful in accomplishing the verification purpose in specific situation. Include the audit objectives for each area and sufficient details which serves as a set of instructions for the assistant involved in the audit and help in controlling the proper execution of work. Consider all possibilities of error. Coordinate the procedures to be applied to the related items. So this is all about constructing an audit program. अभी ऑडिट प्रोग्राम को ऑडिट एविडेंस की तरह यूज़ किया जाता है. जस्ट अ प्लेन रीडिंग, लेट अस गिव इट क्विकली, राइट. सो ऑडिट एविडेंस ऑलरेडी हमने डेफिनेशन डिस्कस किया हुआ है. सो ऑडिट एविडेंस मे बी डिफाइंड एज द इंफॉर्मेशन दैट इज यूज्ड बाय द ऑडिटर इन अराइविंग at the conclusions on which the auditor's opinion is based. Audit evidence includes both information contained in the accounting records underlying the financial statement and the other information. Evidence is the very basis for the formulation of opinion, and an audit program is designed to provide for that by prescribing procedures and techniques. What is the best evidence for testing the accuracy of an assertion is a matter of expert knowledge and experience. So best evidence for testing the accuracy of any assertion is a matter of expert knowledge and experience. That is a primary task before the auditor when he draws up the audit program. Transactions are varied in nature and the impact procedures to be prescribed depend on the prior knowledge of what evidence is reasonably available in respect of each transaction. जैसे कि सेल्स के बारे में अगर हम पूछे, सेल्स कैसे एविडेंस किया जाता है कि हाँ उन्होंने सेल्स एक्चुअली किया है, करा है. सेल्स आर इन्वॉइस्ड बाय एविडेंसेस बाय इनवॉइसेस रेज्ड बाय द क्लाइंट, price list, forwarding notes to client, inventory issue records, sales managers advice to the inventory section, acknowledgements of the receipt of goods by the customers, collection of money against sales by the client. So this is how a sale is being evidenced. कैसे? Invoice raised by the client, price list, forwarding notes to client, inventory issue records, sales managers advises to the inventory section, acknowledgement of the receipt of goods by the customers, and collection of money against sales by the client. In most of the assertion, much of the evidence can be drawn, and each one should be considered and weighed to ascertain its weight to prove or disapprove the assertion. In this process, the auditor would be in a position to identify the evidence that brings the highest satisfaction to him about the appropriateness or otherwise of the assertion. Auditor picks up evidence from a variety of fields, and it is generally of the following broad type. The auditor audit evidence कहाँ से pick करता है? Either it could be documentary examination, physical examination, statement and explanation of management official and employees, statement and explanation of third parties, arithmetical calculations by the auditor, state of internal controls and internal check, interrelationship of various accounting data, subsidiary and memorandum records, minutes, subsequent action by the client and by the others. तो वो भी वहाँ से भी audit evidence वो pick कर सकता है. For example, cash in hand के लिए the best evidence is count. For investment pledged in bank, the banker's certificate. For verifying assertions about book debts, the client's ledger invoices, debit note, credit note, monthly account statements sent to the customers are all evidence. Some of these are corroborative, others being complementary. In addition, the balance confirmation procedures is often resorted to obtain greater satisfaction about the reliability of the assertion. The auditor, however, has to place appropriate weight on each piece of evidence and accordingly should prescribe the priority of verification. It is true that all cases one procedure may not bring the highest satisfaction, and it may be dangerous for the auditor to ignore evidence that is available. By a word available, we do not, available का मतलब क्या होता है? Available मतलब we do not mean that evidence is available with the client is the only evidence available. The auditor should know that what normally should be available in the context of the transaction, having regard to the circumstances and usage. Next, what are the advantages and disadvantages of audit evidence? Let's give a plain reading. What are the advantages? It provides assistance carrying out the audit with total and clear set of instructions of the work generally to be done. It is essential, particularly for major audit, to provide a total perspective of the work to be performed. Selection of assistant for jobs on the basis of capability becomes easier when the work is rationally planned, defined, and segregated. Without a return and a predetermined program, work is necessary to be carried out on the basis of some mental plan. In such a situation, there is always a danger of ignoring or overlooking certain books and records. Under a properly framed program, such danger is significantly less and the audit can proceed systematically. The assistants, by putting their signature on the program, accept the responsibility for the work carried out by them individually, and if necessary, work done may be traced back to the assistant. The principal can control the progress of various audits in hand by examination of audit programs initiated by the assistants deputed to the jobs for the completed work. It serves as a guide for audit to be carried out in the succeeding year as well. And what would some of the disadvantages be? A work may become mechanical and particular parts of program may be carried out without any understanding of the object of such parts in the whole audit scheme. The program often tends to become rigid and inflexible following set grooves. The business may change in its operation of conduct, but the old program may still be carried on. Changes in staff or internal control may render precaution necessary at points different from those originally decided upon. Inefficient assistants may take shelter behind the program, defend deficiencies in their work on the ground that no instruction in the matter is contained therein. A hard and a fast audit program may kill the initiative of efficient and enterprising assistants. All these disadvantages may be eliminated by imaginative supervision of the work carried on by the assistant. The auditor must have a receptive attitude. He must have a receptive attitude as regards the assistants. The assistants should be encouraged to observe matters objectively and bring significant matters to the notice of the supervisor or principal. Next, quality control for audit work, delegation and supervision. An audit is a complex task involving number of people at the different level. As we have observed in the preparation and development of audit program, the auditor would naturally have to depend upon auditor को depend होना होता है number of technical experts as well. During the course of his work, the auditor is likely to use the work performed by the other auditor as well. The objective of the auditor is to implement quality control procedures at the engagement level that provides the auditor reasonable assurance that audit complies with the professional standards and regulatory and legal requirements, and the auditor's report issued is appropriate in the circumstances. So this is about quality. यहाँ पे क्या होता है, the objective जो है implement करना है quality control procedures at the engagement level that provides auditors reasonable assurance that audit complies with professional standards and regulatory and legal requirements, and the audit report issued is appropriate in these circumstances as well. Okay, continuing with our chapter number 2. Okay, now development of an audit plan. Audit plan develop करना है तो उसके description में आप क्या क्या चीज़ें लिखोगे. The auditor shall develop an audit plan and shall include a description of nature, timing, extent of planned RAP, nature, timing, extent of planned FAP at assertion level, and other planned audit procedures that are required to be carried out so that the engagement complies with the essays, right? The audit plan is more detailed. करेक्ट इनकरेक्ट के लिए बहुत ही इंपॉर्टेंट है. जो ऑडिट प्लान होता है ये बहुत ही ज़्यादा डिटेल्ड होता है दैन द ओवरऑल ऑडिट strategy that includes. audit plan में क्या include होता है? nature, timing, extent of audit procedures to be performed by the engagement team members. Planning for these audit procedures take place over the course of the audit as the audit plan for the engagement develops. So audit plan is more detailed than the overall audit strategy that includes nature, timing, extent of audit procedures to be performed by the engagement team members. Planning for these audit procedures take place over the course of audit as the audit plan for the engagement develops, right? जैसे कि for example planning for the auditor's risk assessment procedures occurs early in the audit process. However, planning the nature, timing, extent of the further audit procedures depend on the outcome of those risk assessment procedures. In addition, the auditor may begin the execution of FAP for some classes of transactions, account balances and disclosures before planning all remaining further audit procedures. Next, knowledge होना चाहिए client के business का. It is one of the important principles in developing an overall audit plan. In fact, without adequate knowledge of client's business, a proper audit is not possible. As per SA 315, the auditor shall understand the following. पहले अंडरस्टैंड करो रेलिवेंट इंडस्ट्री रेगुलेटरी एंड अदर एक्सटर्नल फैक्टर्स इंक्लूडिंग द एप्लीकेबल फाइनेंशियल रिपोर्टिंग फ्रेमवर्क. एग्जाम्पल्स क्या होंगे? हम एनवायरनमेंट कैसा है, सप्लाई एंड कस्टमर्स, टेक्नोलॉजी, एनर्जी एंड लॉ. सो व्हाट वुड बी द एग्जाम्पल्स इफ यू फॉर अंडरस्टैंडिंग ऑफ रेलिवेंट इंडस्ट्री रेगुलेटरी एंड अदर एक्सटर्नल फैक्टर्स इंक्लूडिंग द एप्लीकेबल FRF, the competitive environment including demand, capacity, product and price competition, as well as cyclical or seasonal activity, supplier and customer relationships such as type of suppliers and customers and the related contracts with those entities, technological developments such as those related to the entity's products, energy supply and cost, the effect of regulation on entities' operations. Next, understanding loge about the nature of the entity including its operations, its ownership and governance structures, the type of investment that the entity is making and plans to make including investments in special purpose entities and the way that the entity is structured and how it is financed to enable the auditor to understand the class of transaction, account balance and disclosures to be expected in the financial statements. Examples क्या होंगे इधर इसके रिलेटेड अबाउट द नेचर ऑफ एंटिटी से रिलेटेड एग्जाम्पल्स क्या होंगे? पहले तो सोर्सेस. अंडरस्टैंडिंग द सोर्सेज ऑफ एन एंटिटीज अर्निंग्स can help us identify the risk of material misstatement related to the valuation of certain products or line of businesses or areas that may be more susceptible to management fraud. Then understanding key supplier and customer relationships can help us identify potential related parties or risk related to revenue recognition. An entity with competence in multiple tax jurisdictions resulting in additional risk of misstatement in the tax accounts. An acquisition may result in a complex structure of holding companies to achieve benefits to the shareholders, giving rise to significant intercompany transactions which may give rise to material misstatement due to fraud or error. Transactions outside the entity's normal course of business may include complex equity transactions, transactions regarding the leasing of premises or the rendering of management services by the entity to another party. When no consideration is exchanged, transactions under contracts with the terms that change before expiration should be studied in deep. So these are the examples of understanding the nature of the entity, its operation, its ownership and governance structure, the type of investment it is making and the way the entity is structured and how it is financed, right? Next, entities selection and application of accounting policies including the reasons for changes thereto. The auditor shall evaluate whether the entity's accounting policies are appropriate for its business and consistent with the applicable FRF and accounting policies used in the relevant industry as well. Examples would be, we use our understanding of the entity's accounting principles, financial reporting policies or disclosures to help us determine the need to involve a specialist to help perform audit procedures related to a particular disclosure such as pension disclosures. The effect on our audit of significant new or revised disclosures that may be required as a result of changes in the entity's environment, financial condition or activities such as change in the segments or the reporting of segment information arising from a significant business combination. So the effect on our audit of significant new or revised disclosure that may be required as a result of the changes, right? Then management determines that most of the entity's competitors have adopted an accounting policy that is different from the adopted by the entity. After evaluation, management determines that the alternative accounting policy is generally accepted and further determines that the alternative accounting policy preferable as it will result in greater comparability and result in reliable and more relevant information. Management therefore decides to change the entity's accounting policy. Next is the entity's objectives and strategies and those related business risks that may result in a risk of material misstatement. यहाँ के examples क्या होंगे? About the objectives and strategies and business risk. If one of the management's objective is to grow the business, management develop a strategy of steady but regular growth through specific marketing campaigns and development of new markets. Alternatively, management may develop a more aggressive complex strategy of acquiring competitors. Each of these strategies give rise to different business risk and potentially differing risk of material misstatement. Examples of potential business risk include failure to keep up to date with the new products, technologies, or services, excessive reliance on a key supplier, product, or individual, such as the owner, lack of personnel with expertise to react to changes in the industry, insufficient or excessive production capacity caused by inaccurate estimation of demand, loss of financing due to the entity's inability to meet the financial covenants. Then last, understanding loge up, measurement and review of the entity's financial performance. What is it? Measurement and review of the entity's financial performance. External information such as analyst reports, credit rating agency reports may be useful information for us to obtain an understanding of the entity's performance measures. Such reports can be often obtained from the entity itself. In addition to the importance of knowledge of the client's business in establishing an overall audit plan, such knowledge helps the auditor. ये knowledge लोगे तो auditor को क्या help होगा? To identify areas of special audit consideration, to evaluate the reasonableness of both the accounting estimates and management representations, and to make judgments regarding the appropriateness of the accounting policies and disclosures. तो इन सारी चीज़ों की आप क्या करोगे? आप एक अंडरस्टैंडिंग लोगे, एंड दीज इन पर्टिकुलर हर एक पॉइंट के नीचे का एग्जाम्पल्स आर वेरी 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 इंपॉर्टेंट, राइट? So relevant industry, regulatory and other external factors including the applicable financial reporting framework, the nature of the entity including its operations, its ownership and governance structure and such other things. Next, it is the entity's selection and application of accounting policies, entity's objectives and strategies, and those business related risks that may result in the risk of material misstatement, the measurement and review of the entity's financial performance, right? Next, अगर वो बोलते हैं कि ऑडिट प्लानिंग एक कंटिन्यूइंग एक डिस्क्रीट फेज है, डिस्क्रीट फेज, तो क्या ऑडिट प्लानिंग इन डिस्क्रीट फेज है? नहीं. जो हमारा ऐसे 300 है दैट टॉक्स अबाउट प्लानिंग ऑन ऑडिट ऑफ फाइनेंशियल स्टेटमेंट्स बताता है कि प्लानिंग इज नॉट अ डिस्क्रीट फेज ऑफ एन ऑडिट बट रादर अ कंटिन्यूअल एंड इटरेटिव प्रोसेस. व्हाट इज इट? Planning is not a discrete phase of an audit, but rather a continual and iterative process that often begins shortly after the completion of the previous audit and continues till the completion of the current audit engagement. Planning, however, planning में क्या क्या आता है? Include consideration of the timing of certain activities and audit procedures that need to be completed prior to the performance of the further audit procedures. For example, planning includes the need to consider prior to the auditor's identification and assessment of risk of material misstatement such as. तो ये जो 5 चीज़ें हैं वो आपको पहले ही कंसिडर करना पड़ेगा prior to the completion of the or performance of the further audit procedures. क्या वो चीज़ें होंगी? So let me read it again. For example, planning includes the need to consider prior to the auditor's identification and assessment of RMM such as analytical procedures to be applied to RAP or not, obtaining a greater understanding of the legal and regulatory framework applicable to the entity and how the entity is complying with the framework, the determination of materiality, the involvement of experts, the performance of other risk assessment procedures. So these are the matters that the auditor needs to include in planning before the identification of RMM. क्या क्या वो matters होंगे? The analytical procedures to be applied as risk assessment procedures, obtaining a general understanding of the legal and regulatory framework applicable to the entity and how the entity is complying with that framework, the determination of materiality, the involvement of experts, the performance of other risk assessment procedures. Additional consideration in the initial audit engagement. अगर आप पहली बार हैं, तो अगर आप पहली बार किसी का ऑडिट एंगेजमेंट ले रहे हो, दैट इज योर इनिशियल ऑडिट एंगेजमेंट, तो ऑडिटर क्या करेगा? द ऑडिटर शैल अंडरटेक द फॉलोइंग एक्टिविटीज प्रायर टू स्टार्टिंग एन इनिशियल ऑडिट. परफॉर्म करेगा प्रोसीजर्स एज पर SA 220 रिगार्डिंग द एक्सेप्टेंस ऑफ क्लाइंट रिलेशनशिप एंड स्पेसिफिक ऑडिट एंगेजमेंट। तो परफॉर्म करेगा प्रोसीजर्स रिगार्डिंग द एक्सेप्टेंस ऑफ क्लाइंट रिलेशनशिप एंड स्पेसिफिक ऑडिट एंगेजमेंट एंड कम्युनिकेटिंग विद द प्रीडेसेसर ऑडिटर whether there has been where there has been a change of auditors in compliance with the relevant ethical requirements। तो ये दो काम करेगा prior to starting an initial audit। Performing procedures regarding the acceptance of client relationship and the specific audit engagement and communicating with the predecessor auditor whether there has been a change of auditors in compliance with the relevant ethical रिक्वायरमेंट्स। अभी ओवरऑल ऑडिट स्ट्रैटेजी और ऑडिट प्लान जो है ये ऑडिटर की रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी होती है करेक्ट इनकरेक्ट के लिए। अगेन इम्पॉर्टेंट, द ऑडिटर मे डिसाइड टू डिस्कस, वो डिस्कस कर सकता है एलिमेंट्स ऑफ प्लानिंग विद द एंटिटीज मैनेजमेंट टू फैसिलिटेट द कंडक्ट एंड the management of the audit engagement. Although these discussions often occur, the overall audit strategy and the audit plan remain the responsibility of the auditor. While discussing matters included in the overall audit strategy or audit plan, care is required in order not to compromise the effectiveness of audit. Yeah, so I hope it is clear. Although he may discuss the elements of planning with the entities management, but the responsibility still remains of the auditor. The involvement of the engagement partner and other key members of the engagement team in planning the audit draws on their experience and insight, thereby enhancing the effectiveness and efficiency of the planning process. अगर कोर्स ऑफ द ऑडिट में अगर आपके प्लानिंग डिसीजंस में चेंजेस आते हैं तो आप क्या करोगे? ऑडिटर शैल अपडेट एंड चेंज the overall audit strategy and the audit plan as necessary during the course of the audit. As a result of unexpected events, changes in conditions or audit evidence obtained from the result of audit procedures, the auditor needs to modify. He has to modify overall audit strategy and audit plan and thereby the resulting plan NTE of further audit procedures based on the revised consideration of the assessed risk. This may be the case when information comes to the auditor's attention that differs significantly from the information available when the auditor planned the audit procedures. जैसे कि evidence obtained from substantive procedures may contradict the audit evidence obtained through test of controls. Next is direction, supervision and review. The auditor shall plan the nature, timing, extent of direction and supervision of the engagement team and the review of their work. कैसे करेगा? The nature, timing, extent of direction and supervision of the engagement team members and review of their work vary depending on many factors including size and complexity of the entity, area of the audit, the assessed risk of material misstatement, the capabilities and competencies of the individual team members performing the audit work. So these are the 4 factors that decide the nature, timing, extent of the direction and supervision. What is it? Size and complexity of the entity, the area of the audit, the assessed risk of material misstatement, the capabilities and competence of the individual team members performing the audit work. अभी डॉक्यूमेंटेशन की बात करेंगे तो आप क्या क्या चीज़ें डॉक्यूमेंट करोगे? ओवरऑल ऑडिट स्ट्रैटेजी, ओवरऑल ऑडिट प्लान, और अगर कुछ सिग्निफिकेंट चेंजेस है दैट इज मेड ड्यूरिंग द ऑडिट एंगेजमेंट टू द ओवरऑल ऑडिट स्ट्रैटेजी और द ऑडिट प्लान एंड द रीजन फॉर चेंजेस देयर टू। अभी हर एक चीज़ का क्या क्या डॉक्यूमेंटेशन करोगे? द डॉक्यूमेंटेशन ऑफ ओवरऑल ऑडिट स्ट्रैटेजी इज अ रिकॉर्ड। ओवरऑल स्ट्रैटेजी का एक रिकॉर्ड होता है ऑफ की डिसीजंस। क्या होता है? एक रिकॉर्ड होता है ऑफ की डिसीजंस necessary to properly plan the audit and to communicate significant matters to the engagement team. तो audit strategy में क्या document करोगे? key decisions को record करोगे जो necessary है to properly plan the audit and communicate the significant matters to the engagement टीम। देन ऑडिट प्लान से रिलेटेड क्या क्या डॉक्यूमेंट करोगे? इट इज़ अ रिकॉर्ड ऑफ प्लान्ड नेचर, टाइमिंग, एक्सटेंट ऑफ रैप एंड फैप पट assertion level in response to assessed risk. It also serves as a record of proper planning of audit procedures that can be reviewed and approved prior to their performance. The auditor may use standard audit program or audit completion checklist tailored as needed to reflect the particular engagement सर्कमस्टांसेस। और अगर सिग्निफिकेंट चेंजेस होते हैं तो उसमें क्या होगा? A record of significant changes to the overall audit strategy and the audit plan resulting to the changes in the NTE of the audit procedures explains why. वो record क्या explain करता है? Why the significant changes were made and the overall strategy and the audit plan finally adopted for the audit. It also reflects the appropriate response to the significant changes occurring during the audit. The following things should also form part of the auditor's documentation: a summary of discussions with the entity's key decision makers, documentation of audit committee, pre-approval of services when required, audit documentation, access letters, other communications or agreements with management or TCWG regarding the scope or changes in scope of our services, auditor's report on the entity's financial statements, other reports as specified in the engagement agreement. तो ये सारी चीज़ें भी आपके ऑडिटर के डॉक्यूमेंटेशन का पार्ट बनेगी, राइट, इन एडिशन टू योर ओवरऑल ऑडिट स्ट्रैटेजी, ऑडिट प्लान एंड सिग्निफिकेंट changes, right? So this is all about it. Next, relationship क्या है between overall audit strategy and audit plan. Once the overall audit strategy has been established, an audit plan can be developed to address the various matters identified in the overall audit strategy, taking into account the need to achieve the audit objectives through the efficient use of the auditor's resources. The establishment of the overall audit strategy and the detailed audit plan are not necessarily discrete or sequential process but are closely interrelated, since changes in one may result in consequential changes to the other. तो वो discrete या sequential process नहीं है, but they are closely interrelated. Again, see, once the overall audit strategy is established, an audit plan can be developed to address the various matters identified in the overall audit strategy, taking into account the need to achieve the audit objectives through efficient use of auditor's report. The establishment of overall audit strategy and a detailed audit plan are not necessarily discrete or sequential process, but are closely interrelated, since changes in one may result in consequential changes to the other, right? नेक्स्ट वी विल बी टॉकिंग अबाउट आप कैसे एस्टैब्लिश करोगे एक ओवरऑल ऑडिट स्ट्रैटेजी को. पहले स्ट्रैटेजी एस्टैब्लिश करना है तो ऑडिटर क्या करेगा? ऑडिटर आइडेंटिफाई करेगा द कैरेक्टरिस्टिक्स ऑफ एंगेजमेंट दैट डिफाइंस इट्स स्कोप, कैरेक्टरिस्टिक्स ऑफ एंगेजमेंट दैट डिफाइंस इट्स स्कोप, असर्टेन करेगा द रिपोर्टिंग ऑब्जेक्टिव्स ऑफ द एंगेजमेंट, टू प्लान द टाइमिंग ऑफ ऑडिट एंड द नेचर ऑफ कम्युनिकेशंस रिक्वायर्ड, राइट. तो अगर रिपोर्टिंग ऑब्जेक्टिव्स असर्टेन करना है तो उसके एग्जाम्पल्स क्या होंगे? द एंटिटीज टाइम टेबल फॉर रिपोर्टिंग सच एज इंटरिम एंड फाइनल स्टेजेस, द ऑर्गेनाइजेशन ऑफ मीटिंग विद द मैनेजमेंट एंड TCWG to discuss the NTE of audit work, the discussion with the management and TCWG regarding the expected type and timing of reports to be issued, and other communication both written and oral, including the auditor's reports, management letters and communications to TCWG, the discussion with the management regarding the expected communications on the status of the audit work throughout the engagement, right. नेक्स्ट, ओवरऑल जब आप ओवरऑल ऑडिट स्ट्रैटेजी कर रहे हो तो ऑडिटर क्या करेगा? कंसिडर करेगा फैक्टर्स दैट इन द ऑडिटर्स प्रोफेशनल जजमेंट आर सिग्निफिकेंट इन डायरेक्टिंग द एंगेजमेंट टीम effort. Consider करेगा the results of the preliminary engagement activities and where applicable with the knowledge gained or other engagement performed by the engagement partners for the entity is relevant or not. और उसके कुछ examples लिख सकते हो, जैसे कि preliminary identification of areas where there may be a higher risk of material misstatement, उसका preliminary identification कर सकते हो. Result of previous audit that involved evaluating the operating effectiveness of internal control, including the nature of identified deficiencies and actions taken to address them. Volume of transactions which may determine whether it is more efficient for the auditor to rely on internal control. फिर auditor क्या करेगा? Ascertain करेगा nature, timing, extent of resources necessary to perform the एंगेजमेंट. सो जब भी ओवरऑल ऑडिट स्ट्रैटेजी एस्टैब्लिश करेंगे वो आइडेंटिफाई करेंगे द कैरेक्टरिस्टिक्स ऑफ द एंगेजमेंट एंड देन डिफाइन इट्स स्कोप, असर्टेन द रिपोर्टिंग ऑब्जेक्टिव्स ऑफ द मैनेजमेंट, टू प्लान द टाइमिंग ऑफ ऑडिट and the nature of the communications required. Consider करेगा factors that in its professional judgment are significant in directing the engagement team efforts. Consider करेगा the result of preliminary engagement activities where applicable, whether knowledge gained on other engagements performed by the engagement partner for the entity is relevant, and ascertain the nature, timing, extent of the necessary resources to perform the engagement. तो ऐसे आप एक overall audit strategy आप बना सकते Oh, next, what is overall audit strategy? Overall audit strategy sets the scope, timing, and direction of the audit and guides the development of the more detailed audit plan. वो set ही नहीं करता है, वो guide भी करता है the development of the more detailed audit plan. The auditor shall establish, okay, the process of establishing the overall audit strategy assists the auditor to determine, subject to the completion of the auditor's risk assessment procedures. अगर आप ओवरऑल ऑडिट स्ट्रैटेजी बनाते हो तो ऑडिटर को कैसे हेल्प मिलेगी? रिसोर्सेज पहले द रिसोर्सेज टू डिप्लॉय फॉर स्पेसिफिक ऑडिट एरियाज सच एज द यूज ऑफ अप्रोप्रिएटली एक्सपीरियंस टीम फॉर हायर रिस्क एरियाज ऑफ और द इन्वॉल्वमेंट ऑफ एक्सपर्ट्स ऑन कॉम्प्लेक्स मैटर्स. तो रिसोर्सेज को कैसे डिप्लॉय करोगे फॉर स्पेसिफिक ऑडिट एरियाज, ठीक है. फिर कितना रिसोर्स अलोकेट करूँ? द अमाउंट ऑफ रिसोर्सेज टू अलोकेट टू स्पेसिफिक ऑडिट एरिया सच एज द नंबर ऑफ टीम members assigned to observe the inventory count at material locations, the extent of review of the other auditors' work in case of group audit, or the audit budget in hours to allocate to high risk areas. फिर कब डिप्लॉय करोगे? ठीक है, रिसोर्सेज डिप्लॉय करना है कितना, हाउ मच ऑफ रिसोर्सेज टू बी डिप्लॉयड, when these resources are to be deployed, as to whether at an interim audit stage or at a key cutoff dates, and how such resources are managed, directed and supervised, such as when team briefing and debriefing meetings are expected to be held, how engagement partner and manager reviews are expected to take place, and whether to complete engagement quality control reviews. Yes, this is how, if you establish an overall audit strategy, it will assist the auditor in things regarding the resources, right? Next, अगर आप प्लानिंग करते हो, benefits of planning in the audit of financial statements. Adequate planning benefits the audit of financial statements and several, जैसे कि helping the auditor to devote appropriate attention to important areas of audit, helping the auditor identify and resolve potential problems on a timely basis, helping the auditor properly organize and manage the audit engagement so that it is performed in an effective and efficient manner, assisting in the selection of engagement team members with appropriate level of capabilities and competencies to respond to anticipated risk and the proper assignment of work to them, facilitating the direction and supervision of the engagement team members and the review of their work, assisting where applicable in the coordination of work done by the auditors of competence and एक्सपर्ट्स. लाइक ऑडिट प्लानिंग में क्या होता है? ऑडिट स्ट्रैटेजी होता है और ऑडिट प्लान होता है. तो पहले एस्टैब्लिश होता है ओवरऑल ऑडिट स्ट्रैटेजी एंड डेवलपिंग एन ऑडिट प्लान. ऑडिट प्लान शुड, the auditor should plan his work to enable him to conduct effective audit in an efficient and timely manner. Plan should be based on the knowledge of the client's business. तो plan should be made to cover among the other things. तो ये सारी चीज़ें कवर होनी चाहिए जब आप प्लान बना रहे हो. Acquiring knowledge of the client's accounting systems, policies and internal control procedures. Establishing the expected degree of reliance to be placed on the internal control. Determining and programming the nature, timing, extent of the audit procedures to be performed, coordinating the work to be performed. Further, plans should be further developed and revised as necessary during the course of the audit. So this is all about your revision of your chapter number 2.